accept. What HSBC had not bet on was Facebook. And so a guy named Wes Streeting puts up a page that says, "Stop the Great HSBC Graduate Ripoff." Goes up through his Facebook network and then other people's Facebook network. It starts showing up in the fans list, and thousands of people join this group. First thing that happens is people start documenting. If you want to get your money out of HSBC and into Royal Bank of Scotland, here's the steps. Right? Just like the community of practice on Flickr, once one person solves it once, it's available to everybody for all time, or for at least as long as that solution remains valuable. And then they fixed the coordination problem. They started having online protests. No matter where the students were, they were also here. Right? And they started protesting on Facebook, which generated publicity, which generated media in the UK, which generated more attention, which generated more people coming to the Facebook page, which generated more protests. You can see where that little positive feedback is. Then they all said, hey, you know what? We're going to be back at school in September. Why don't we get together and we'll all go down to the city. We'll go down to London's Financial District, we'll march around in front of HSBC and have a real world protest. That protest never happened because by that point HSBC caved. And they sent their PR guy out to say, oh, whoa, you know, we're a customer service organization. Obviously we don't want to do anything that's going to make people unhappy. But of course HSBC didn't back down because it made the students unhappy. They could predict that was going to happen. It backed down because the students were unhappy and coordinated. The American philosopher William James once said, thinking is for doing, by which he meant we don't have brains to give us access to abstract cogitation. We have brains to help us figure out what to do next. Right? Our brains are tied to action. Something analogous is happening to media right now. Increasingly, publishing is for acting. When the Telegraph puts up a news story that says, HSBC is reneging on the deal, just thought you'd like to know, it's about all they can do. When it goes up on Facebook, Wes Streeting can say, HSBC is reneging on the deal. Thought you'd like to know. Here's what you can do about it. Please join us. The pattern of I'm informing and the pattern of we're collaborating now happen side by side. Media is increasingly less a source of information than it is a site of coordination. Right? And the media that's working, like social media, is increasingly offering people the ability to do anything from just sharing information all the way to coordinating action. In fact, just today, there's a proposal floating around to use Twitter as a coordination tool to monitor voter suppression in real time nationwide. Right? This is something that was inconceivable even a couple of years ago. So this pattern is fast. Here's another example of the same thing. You may remember flash mobs from 2003, sort of the flagpole sitting of that year. Everybody participating was subscribed to email, synchronized watches, show up at the same place at the same time, and do something moderately surprising. So here's a pillow fight that's spontaneously breaking out in Toronto. Flash mobs were promoted by Bill from New York, right? The mysterious Bill from New York. That's where the mails came from. Bill from New York turned out to be Bill Wasik of Harper's Magazine. And he was doing this as a way of making fun of hipster culture. What he wanted to show was that hipsters are so brain dead that if you told them that what they were about to do was going to be even moderately shocking to the bourgeoisie, they would set aside any sense of judgment they have and do any damn fool thing you wrote down in a piece of email, which indeed came to pass over and over again. Right? And so this pattern spreads from New York, San Francisco, goes up to Toronto, London, Paris, it's spreading around. In 2006, it hits Belarus. Somebody puts up a live journal page and says, hey, you guys, I know, let's have a flash mob. Let's all go to downtown Minsk and we'll walk around October Square eating ice cream, which is, I guess, what passes for a good time in Minsk. And so here they are, the flower of Belarusian youth, eating their ice cream and walking around. And unusually, though, for the history of flash mobs, in this set of photo documentation, and there is always photo documentation, is this set of photos. Black-clad secret agents dragging those kids bodily out of the square. The problem with the group eating ice cream wasn't the ice cream. It was the group. It's illegal to act in concert in October Square. Lukashenko is a European dictator of the old school, the leader of Belarus, widely understood to have stolen the election in March of 2006, and learned the lesson from the fall of communism and from the protests in his own country. He realized that when there is a spontaneous protest, people need something to rally around. And typically the main square in the capital city is where spontaneous protests break out, as with the pattern with Leipzig. So we just made it illegal to be a group in October Square. Quite ingenious, problem solved. And so these kids, wanting to protest, had to get around that. And rather ingeniously, they hit on smart mobs, or they hit on flash mobs, which is, there's no conspiracy to penetrate, because it's on LiveJournal, right? How much more public could it be? And the Lukashenko government can't stop the group from entering October Square, because when they enter October Square, they're not a group, which is, of course, the whole design pattern for flash mobs. This is an example of media not just as a source of information, but as a site of action. But it's also the round trip, right? This isn't just real-world activity dangling at the end of a long media chain, because those kids didn't just bring their ice cream to October Square. They also brought their cameras, because they wanted these pictures. They didn't just want to force the state to react in real time. They wanted to document the reaction and upload it so the rest of the world could see. They wanted to demonstrate what life is like in Belarus, because nothing says dictatorship like arresting people for eating ice cream. Right? And they've done this several times. I love these guys. My favorite, although it's less photogenic, is let's all walk around October Square smiling at each other. Right? There's a dilemma for the cops, right? Because arrest any citizen who seems unusually happy is pretty much a caricature of the police. But look where it came from, right? It came from something that was meant to mock the participants. And less than 3 years later, it's been pressed into service as a real political tool. In this environment, fewer and fewer of the values of use are embedded in the software, and more of the values of use are embedded in the users and the users' choices. So even though flash mobs were born out of a critical stance of the participants, in high freedom environments, like the ones we're all fortunate to live in, right, these new tools tend to get deployed for entertainment. In low freedom environments, in environments where it is literally illegal to be in a group at all, these same tools take on a profoundly political dimension. And that fact of group coordination is I think, spreading wide. So up that ladder, sharing, collaboration, collective action. The difficulty is that the collective action pattern is in a way the hardest to get going and the rarest still. This is the one I think that's most worth watching. I want to shift gears now and tell 3 more stories, all in one way or another about the gap between what individual users are feeling and what people inside companies are communicating from the outside. So I'll start here with my absolutely favorite corporate weblog of all time, the Johnson & Johnson weblog. This is a screenshot taken from earlier this summer.